The great American humorist Will Rogers, who was part Indian, is quoted as saying, "When Christopher Columbus arrived in America, my family was waiting there to offer a big welcome." Then he added, "Later we all wondered if Grandpa hadn't been a bit hasty about the whole thing." Two conflicting cultures going head to head over such fundamental issues as land, religion, and lifestyle. The idea of intercultural harmony got off to a pretty good start. We all know they celebrated the first Thanksgiving together. Then, apparently, something went wrong. In any event, it all went downhill from there. Until about 100 years ago, very few American Indians could read or write. History was by oral tradition, from one generation to the next. The white man had a slicker system, the printed word, the high-speed press. It was tailor-made adventure. If the facts weren't exciting, make up new ones. If the history wasn't inspiring, rewrite it. And the Indians were the perfect villains. To the early publishers, it was a matter of selling books. Of course, this took on a whole new dimension a few decades later. In the movies, the Indians provided the perfect fall guy. His role as the ruthless heathen allowed the non-Indian settler to usually be viewed as the victim.
Just look at Christian Flats. Those Redskins have made a ghost town out of it.
Here come them Red Devils, Jack.
You mean when the Indians run the whites out of the territory?
Tell them to send an army out here. Tell them to dig every Indian out from behind every rock and wipe the war paint off his face with a bullet.
Now, how do you feel about the poor, misunderstood Indians?
Speak to me, Indian brothers!
In the real world, before the Old West movies were invented, attitudes toward Indians weren't necessarily negative. Billy Early, born in 1888, was already a teenager before the first silent movies appeared.
Well, yes, I remember people's thoughts and thinking about Indians at that time, though there was not any animosity or anything like that, and mostly what we heard was what we read and what we were told about the different Indians. Most of them were all good Indians, didn't have too much, and we were not taught to be afraid of anything, let alone the Indians. They talk about civilizing the Indians. That's a word that I have always resented. I don't like the word civilizing us. I think the Indians had their own culture, and at that time they were as civilized as anybody else in this country. I don't understand why they have to use the word civilized.
It's also interesting to hear the childhood memories of Indian adults. Peterson Zah is the president of the Navajo Nation.
The cowboys, I remember at a boarding school, there were a lot of kids who were always hollering, screaming, and rooting for the cowboys because the Indians were always made a bad group. It used to really make me wonder. It made me. These were the Indian kids. These were Navajo kids. These were Pimas and Hopis and Papagos.
Bill Hastings, who is half Cherokee and was raised on a reservation in Oklahoma, is the Indian school superintendent at Fort Apache, Arizona.
And as far as the stereotype, most minorities were. If you look at the blacks in the movies, the Orientals in the movies, they all had this stereotype, and even the Italians, they've all fought against it. It's up to us to change that. We didn't have much say on it being made back then, but it's up for us and the children that we're releasing from this school, that we're graduating, and from the other leaders to change that.
But perhaps the stereotype even more negative was that the Indian had no sophistication. Hello, I'm Bill McCune. We probably have more misinformation about Native Americans than any other major ethnic group. Our focus in this three-part series is the Indian of the American Southwest, specifically Arizona, the state with the largest native population. Our purpose is to simply tell the story, from prehistoric times to the present day, in the belief that knowledge is the first step toward tolerance and appreciation of ethnic and cultural diversity. Heaven knows that's a worthy goal. We recognize that in the time allotted, we can offer only a rather fast-paced overview of this rich history, but we hope our effort will inspire future writers and producers to offer more detailed accounts. Now, please stay with us. Peach Springs, Arizona, the Wallapai Reservation. In earlier times, the drums and songs might have struck fear in the non-Indian observer. Unfamiliar sounds, a war chant perhaps. This is part of a modern war.
This is a sobriety powwow. If you're feeling good, go feel good at home in bed. Please, if you're partying, go somewhere else. You're not wanted in this arbor or in this area.
Representatives of several Arizona Indian tribes have come together for a conference on drug and alcohol abuse. The evening is time for powwow. Wallapai, Quechan, Apache, Hopi, Yavapai, Navajo, dancing together, celebrating, working toward a common goal. Historically, some of these tribes were natural enemies. They would not have danced together. But prehistorically, there are some common ties, a relationship, as all native people on the North and South American continents are believed to have migrated from Asia. Dr. Emil Haury, a world-renowned anthropologist, began his study of prehistoric Arizona in the 1920s.
Well, in my view, man first came to Arizona about the same time that he got into the New World from Asia, at about 10 to 12 to 15,000 years ago. That subject is debated very extensively, but we do have repetitive evidence of let's say, the 12,000-year-old date.
12 to 15,000 years ago, the end of the Ice Age, the beginning of the Stone Age, Arizona was cool and wet. Woolly mammoths were hunted by Paleo Indians. With the passage of 20 or 30 centuries, the climate became hotter and drier. The prehistoric elephant died out, replaced by smaller game, early deer and bison. And in southeastern Arizona, there emerged a slightly more advanced people, whom we call Cochise man.
With the loss of the big game animals, people had to rely on gathering vegetable foods from nature to subsist. They had not yet reached an agricultural stage where they planted seeds and harvested what grew.